What do you know about morale? There was a story a short time ago about how these women went to a jail in Brazil and they seduced the guards. And while they were seducing the guards, one of them took the keys and helped aid in a bit an escape of some narcos. Now, I'm not a big fan of prison guards any more than I'm a big fan of security guards that work at nonprofits, right? Or cops that have second jobs in some sort of security role, right? But I'm even less of a fan of somebody using sexual extortion or sexual enticement as a means by which to aid and abet organized crime. And unfortunately, it happens at all levels. It's been known to happen in very significant manners, including to people who might be in a national security role. You think that somehow you're entitled to what, R&R? The use of women's sexualities as a form of conflict resolution is well known throughout history. So, too, is an understanding of this sense of entitlement that one has to sexual felicity as a reward for service. And unfortunately, for most of the 20th century and into the 21st century, a great deal of the relationship between the United States and its international efforts and whatever would have been what we would have alleged to have espoused as our convictions have been in contrast to each other because of that. Because of this concept that somehow, as a reward or an entitlement for some sort of specifically high risk activity, one is entitled to sexual gratification. And this is outside of using sexual subordination or acts of sexual humiliation as a means by which to try to defame or undermine one who would be identified as opposition. Oftentimes, such defamation includes acts of compelled homosexuality or pedophilia. Understanding being that as the conquering force, as the offensive paradigm, then engaging in unconventional tactics, including ones that would attempt to undermine somebody's morale based on exploitation of concepts of sexual impermissibility and things that would be viewed in their society as being a negative reflection on the character of the national cause or whatever else was the identification of the group involved, would outweigh whatever might get back to the home front about what they did abroad. And this is exacerbated if the social conditions around concepts of sexual liberation support a paradigm wherein not only are acts of homosexuality normalized or legitimized, not only are concepts of intergenerational sexual relationships outside of, and especially outside of a marriage contract, legitimized, not only are crimes that would otherwise be considered sex crimes allowed to be given leniency in consideration of them being connected to some sort of psychological disease or illness that can be treated as a medical matter as opposed to a criminal matter. These things also help to create antagonistic situations that can be very difficult to surmount and unfortunately in the long run give a very 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 significant disadvantage to any alleged reconstruction or post-conflict scenario resolution efforts. If you engage in acts of overt sex terrorism or campaigns connected to rape or sexual extortion in order to accomplish your wartime aims, then the situation regarding your presence afterward is going to be judged accordingly. That's just the basic fact. You don't have to be in the military at a high level to understand the implications of that. It's also going to impact your morale back home. Ideally, you go, you fight, you conquer, you win, you leave whatever is supposed to be considered acceptable as a replacement for that which compelled you to go and fight to begin with, and then your boys and girls get to go home. Your men and women get to go home. And when they go home, the nation is reaffirmed, understanding that if a call to arms is made, then there are people that are ready to perform and to accomplish the goals successfully, expeditiously, hopefully the most cost effective manner. And ideally, there's something about the campaign that opens up an opportunity for those communities to have a relationship moving forward. It's very difficult to do that when your campaign is orchestrated in an effort to undermine the morale and the long term capacity for that community to establish or reestablish itself based on acts of rape or sex terrorism. This is what we're dealing with today. And this is why, especially if we are going to try to talk about responsibility or campaigns around demilitarization, we have to take responsibility for our attempts to try to justify our sense of entitlement to a particular socio-political paradigm without actually addressing the responsibility we have in an international context. The concept of sexual liberation and concepts of women's liberation are misrepresentative of the political realities around the consumption mentality the United States has, as well as the disproportionate influence it attempts to have on policy in other areas around the world, up to and including healthcare policy, up to and including education policy, up to and including policy related to commerce. This is a fact. This is what people have been telling us for a very, very long time. And I bring this up right now because the sort of enticement mentality that has gone into misrepresentations of the role that faith plays in sustaining a national cause, especially a national cause at war, is something that has not been addressed or attuned to very forthrightly in this country. And I personally have been subjected to it, and I, in some ways, whether wittingly or unwittingly, have also been a perpetrator of it in some manners as well. And it is important for me to take responsibility, which I've done. Not only have I been subjected to acts of sex terrorism and sexual extortion in the last 10 years, but I came to a political catharsis and understanding that my genuine priorities and aspirations did not comport with what was considered to be politically correct or politically expedient within a specific context of the United States political paradigm. And that the priorities around politics somebody else had defined, not only operationally, but also in terms of a foundation for other kinds of development, did not have long term viability, were amoral in terms of actually understanding our relationship to those internationally. And we're not going to be able to provide me with the kind of partnership or meaningful community that I not only desire, but know I deserve and want everybody I'm involved with to know they deserve as well. So, when we are talking about these concepts or these understandings around concepts of entitlement to a commercial sexual economy, these things have to be addressed directly in that regard as well. It's unfortunate situation we're in that I personally have spent 4 years now having every other possibility in my life subordinated to somebody else's prognostication that their success is somehow to be calibrated based upon my sexual performance. And it's disingenuous to anybody I would otherwise have had a relationship up to and including a sexual relationship with to say that I can't even have a real conversation with them. I can't even have a real experience with them, including one that says I'm interested in a long-term relationship with you, but sexual activity is not something I consider to be within the realm of possibility under these current circumstances. We haven't known each other long enough that I don't have my own home with my own name. I consider that to be a material precondition to feeling safe engaging sex. You understand? A woman has a right to say, I don't actually feel it's safe for me to engage in sexual activity when I don't have my own home, when I don't have my own means of income. I don't feel it's safe to engage sexual activity when I don't have my own means of income to provide for myself. and I don't have my own home. Why can't you hear that? Why can you not hear a woman or a man say, it is not safe for me to have sex if I don't have my own income to provide for myself and I don't have my own home? Any effort to try to compel me to engage in sexual activity is against my will. I'm doing everything I can within the bounds of the law in accordance with my capabilities in order to be able to provide myself with an income that can sustain me so I'm not dependent on somebody else. I'm doing everything I can within the bounds of the law and in accordance with my capabilities to provide for my own housing and my own place so that if intimacy is something I desire, it can be done safely. Why is that not something that's allowed to be acknowledged? And if it's because you have declared me for some reason to be in the kind of adversarial positioning that you would label as a combatant, you have not declared yourself. That makes you the terrorist. And so now, we're in that situation. That's how I understand it. I do not approve the use of chemical, biological, or nuclear weapons. If you need to go to war, we have plenty of conventional armaments already at our disposal and already in accumulation. I also do not approve of hedging sexual activity involving people at any age on contracting for more armament. We're really at a point where both morally and practically we need to rebalance our consideration of our arsenal and its purpose. It should be more than just an inventory for collateralization on financial arrangements that are not otherwise accounted for in a manner that's even reasonably appropriate. And I do not agree with allowing for it to be redistributed, including in an intangible form, to people that claim that somehow we're supposed to respect them and treat them as if they have committed to the Hippocratic Oath or to providing for people that are most vulnerable and hence should be considered for white flag treatment. If you use biological weapons, you don't have that white flag. You don't have that red cross. You have biological weapons.